In the quiet streets of Boston in 1997, a man in a wrinkled suit climbed into a cab, late, frustrated, and in no mood for conversation. The driver, an older man with weathered hands and a cap pulled low over his eyes, simply nodded and pulled away from the curb. From the start, the passenger rolled his eyes at the driver's slow turns, his outdated car, even his thick accent. He smirked to himself, whispering under his breath, "Probably doesn't even know where he is." But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that the man behind the wheel wasn't just a cabbie. He was a ghost from a story this city tried to forget. A name once whispered in courtrooms, now lost in time, until this ride. Buckle up. What happens in the next 20 minutes will change the way you see strangers forever. Hit like, subscribe and let's go. Walter Klein was a mid-level finance consultant living in the North End of Boston. Every weekday, like clockwork, he left his brownstone apartment at 7:45 a.m., briefcase in hand, coat always a size too big, and caught a cab to the downtown office tower where numbers made more sense than people. At 43, Walter was the kind of man who corrected grammar at meetings and never missed a lunch break. His world was measured, stable, even boring. He disliked surprises, trusted routines, and treated strangers like background noise. That morning in February, the air was dry and cold, the kind that stings your lungs. Walter was late. A rare thing. Annoyed, he flagged down the first cab he saw, an old, beat-up Lincoln that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. He muttered a complaint, slid into the back seat, and gave the driver a glance that said hurry up. He didn't know it yet, but this ride was about to throw his ordered life into chaos. The cab pulled onto Tremont Street, the tires crunching over patches of leftover snow. At first, everything seemed typical: traffic lights, murmured radio static, the distant honk of a delivery truck. Walter stared out the window, checking his watch every 30 seconds. But then, something strange. The driver made an unexpected turn, not wildly wrong, but not the usual route. Walter leaned forward, frowning. "This isn't the fastest way," he said sharply. The driver didn't answer. Just a slight nod, eyes fixed ahead. A few more turns followed, each one just a little more off course. The streets grew narrower, quieter, unfamiliar. Walter's fingers gripped the leather seat. He asked again, firmer this time. Still, no response. Just the soft tap of the turn signal, ticking like a metronome. The air felt thicker, the silence heavier. And then, for the first time, Walter noticed the driver's knuckles, scarred. Not fresh, old. Worn. He opened his mouth to speak again, but something in his chest whispered, "Wait. Watch." Something was off. And this was just the beginning. As the cab wound deeper into the back streets of South Boston, Walter's confusion turned into a slow-burning anxiety. These weren't shortcuts. These were alleys, industrial blocks, half-board storefronts with faded signs and broken windows. He cleared his throat, louder this time, "Where are we going?" But the driver remained silent, his face calm, almost blank. That's when Walter noticed something chilling: the driver's ID badge wasn't clipped to the visor. In fact, there was no ID at all. Just a smudge where one used to be. Walter glanced down at the dashboard, no GPS, no meter running. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he didn't dare look away. His pulse began to rise. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted something tucked into the passenger seat, an old military-style duffel bag, frayed at the edges, with initials faded from time. And then, the driver exhaled, slowly, like someone remembering something heavy. The sound was low, deliberate. Walter didn't know why, but it made his skin crawl. Something wasn't right. And the worst part? He still didn't know how far this ride would go. The cab came to an unexpected stop near an abandoned warehouse by the docks, no warning, no explanation. Walter's heart thudded in his chest. He was about to demand answers when the driver stepped out without a word, leaving the engine running. For a moment, silence pressed in from all sides. Then, curiosity mixed with fear pushed Walter to act. He reached over the seat and opened the glove compartment. Inside, instead of maps or registration papers, he found a folded manila envelope. His name was scribbled on it, Walter Klein, in neat, deliberate handwriting. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings. Old. Yellowed. Photos from the 1970s, images of a courtroom, a military trial, a young man in uniform, with a name beneath it, Henry Doyle. Walter stared at the face in the photo. It was the driver. Decades younger, but unmistakable. Convicted of manslaughter. Disappeared after parole. A story long buried. Walter's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a taxi ride anymore. This was something personal. Something planned. And he was now a part of it. Walter's fingers clenched the envelope as if it might vanish. He read the headlines again, slower this time, hoping he was wrong. Army Sergeant convicted in civilian death, 1974. Parole granted. Where is Henry Doyle now? His throat went dry. The man driving this cab had been part of a violent past Walter had no connection to, or so he thought. At the bottom of the pile was a letter, brittle and creased. It was addressed to Walter's father. His father, dead since 1985. And that's when it hit him, his father had been a prosecutor during the post-Vietnam tribunal years. Walter never paid much attention to the details, to the names his father carried home like silent burdens. But now, it was all coming back. This wasn't random. It was connected to blood, to history, to things buried in court records and forgotten family dinners. Outside the cab, the driver stood motionless, staring out over the water like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Inside, Walter's fear turned to dread. This wasn't just about a ride. It was retribution. Or redemption. And he didn't know which was worse. Walter sat frozen, the envelope still in his lap, his mind racing through every possibility, every exit. Outside, the driver turned and began walking back to the cab. His steps were steady, deliberate, like a man with nothing left to lose. Walter's breath quickened. He reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Locked. From the outside. Panic surged. His phone, no signal. Of course. He watched the driver approach, now just feet away, his face unreadable under the brim of that worn cap. When he opened the door, Walter flinched. But the man didn't move toward him. Instead, he held out something, a worn leather-bound book. A journal. Your father kept notes, the driver finally said, voice rough, low. He knew it wasn't justice. It was politics. Walter stared at him, trembling. Was this revenge? A warning? Or some twisted need for acknowledgement? He didn't know. All he knew was this man could destroy everything, his peace, his family's legacy, maybe even his life. The next move would be his. And it would matter. The journal trembled in Walter's hands as he flipped through its pages, scrawled notes, names, testimonies, even a confession draft. His father had known. He'd known that Henry Doyle had taken the fall to protect higher ranks, to keep a scandal buried under patriotic lies. Walter felt the ground shift beneath him, his family's name wasn't just built on law, but on silence, and sacrifice. Suddenly, the cab's windshield shattered. A brick, hurled from the dark, followed by shouting from across the street. A group of younger men, rough, angry, ran toward them. Snitch, one of them yelled. Walter ducked. Doyle didn't. He stood tall, calm, not flinching. They've followed me since I started digging again, he muttered. This isn't just about you, son. It never was. Walter stared at him, half in awe, half in terror. Everything was falling apart. Sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. Walter had seconds to decide, run from the truth, or carry it forward. And in that chaos, in that moment of panic, he did something he never imagined. He opened the door, and stepped out beside the man. Walter stood shoulder to shoulder with the man he once dismissed as just another cabbie, now revealed as a weathered witness to injustice. As the group approached, yelling threats, a black SUV screeched to a halt behind them. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, flashing badges. Federal agents. One of them called out, "Mr. Doyle, we got your message. You're safe." Walter blinked, stunned. Doyle glanced at him with the faintest trace of a smile. "I mailed copies of the journal a week ago," he said quietly. This was just closure. The crowd dispersed under the agent's orders. In the calm that followed, Walter finally exhaled. His knees weak, his mind spinning, but something in him had changed. He wasn't just the son of a man with secrets anymore. He was a witness now, too. A bridge between silence and truth. And as they drove away in separate vehicles, Walter back to his cold office tower, Doyle into some protected chapter of his fading life, both men knew the past hadn't been erased. But it had finally been seen. Weeks passed. Walter returned to his routines, same office, same streets, same coffee shop on Hanover Street. But something was different. He no longer looked through people. He looked at them. Every stranger a possible story. Every silence, a question. The journal he once clutched in fear now sat locked in his drawer, not forgotten, but honored. His father's legacy, complicated, flawed, no longer felt untouchable. And Doyle? No one heard from him again. Maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe some ghosts don't want peace, just truth. And now, Walter carried a piece of it. So, next time you step into a cab, or pass someone on the street who seems invisible, ask yourself, what story are they carrying? And what would you do if it crashed into yours? Hit like if this made you think. Share if it made you feel. And tell us in the comments, what truths are waiting just outside your comfort zone. Subscribe for more real stories that stay with you.